What's up and welcome, I am the one and only West Coast King, and welcome back to Major League 90, where we are talking Major League Soccer. And if you thought the playoff race couldn't get any crazier, well, this week has proved you wrong once again. Hey, it's the MLS, anything could happen, and there were some crazy results around the league this weekend. So let's not waste any time, let's get this thing started with the Thursday match, which featured NYCFC playing at home at Yankee Stadium against DC United. Now, coming into this thing, DC occupied the 6th and final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference, 1 point separating them from 7th place Orlando. So, of the two teams, I would say DC needed these points more, but they only had one road win to their name coming in. So it was highly unlikely they would get the win, but I'm sure they would have done with 1 point. 1 point would have been absolutely fine heading into this one. They very nearly got it as well. This was definitely the most thrilling match of the weekend, or of the week, and I was watching it. It was absolutely nuts. 4 goals scored in the final 15 minutes. Just absolutely crazy scenes at Yankee Stadium. DC down a goal in the 92nd minute, gets the equalizer, but Frank Lampard, my goodness, at 38 years old, it would be hard to say he's not the best midfielder in the league. He just continues to get them goals. I don't know how he's found the fountain of youth. I mean, he just continues to put up great performance after great performance, and he got them all 3 points with a late goal with beautiful precision in the box. Calm, cool, and collected, slotted it home with his left foot, and DC United picked up the 3-2 win in that one. It was an absolutely monster game for NYCFC as well, because with that win, they take back the first place spot in the Eastern Conference. I don't know who's going to finish in first place. It could be anyone. Maybe NYCFC is the team. I might put my money on them right now with the injury problems in Toronto and the form of New York Red Bulls compared to NYCFC. I don't know, but I would say it's probably going to be one of the New York teams. I'd probably put my money on NYCFC to take that first place spot heading into the playoffs. And speaking of New York teams, not to be outdone, the New York Red Bulls did pick up a big win as well. They were on the road in Vancouver to take on the Whitecaps, and they came away with a 1-0 win. And not a whole lot of fireworks in that one, but they did get a massive victory. Their form has been a little bit suspect as of late, but they're starting to put together some decent performances, and the biggest part is they're picking up the victories. They're picking up the points. Doesn't really matter how you do it in the MLS as long as you get it done. They're getting it done right now as well. Now on the flip side of that, Vancouver, who are tied with Seattle right now on 31 points, both teams 4 points out of a playoff spot, really needed those points at home. Couldn't get it done, and that's been Vancouver's Achilles heel all season long. They just don't perform well in those big games, and they're not doing well at home. Only 5 wins at home this season. It's one of the worst records in the league. Not a good situation for Vancouver, and that's really why I don't think they're a playoff team. That loss right there really hurt them. But before we get really into the Western Conference situation, let's revisit the East real quick and wrap that up. And more specifically, that last playoff spot in the Eastern Conference, currently still held by DC despite their loss. Orlando wasn't playing this weekend. The only other team that could possibly take that spot, inexplicably, is New England. And we talked about them ad nauseum last episode. They're awful. Worst goal difference in the league by far, -16. And yet, they picked up a massive win this weekend at home against Colorado. And we'll get to what that means for Colorado in just a minute, but New England actually won a game. Let's just focus on that for a minute. Not only did they win a game, they scored goals, which is even more impressive than actually winning the game. They hadn't scored in forever. They win 2-0 at home against Colorado, one of the better defensive teams in the league. I couldn't believe that score, though. I saw it. I thought for sure Colorado, this is where they're going to start turning things around. Now, still without Jermaine Jones, which is going to be a problem for them. When Jones isn't in the lineup, they're not the same team. You can say that about any team when they lose their star in this league, but definitely for Colorado, that holds true. So, New England, they got the job done, and they're only 2 points back now of that final playoff spot. They're on 30 points, DC on 32, Orlando right there in the middle at 31. They could do it. If New England makes the playoffs this season, honestly, I'd be stunned. I've said that they've been out of the playoff picture for weeks now, yet they're only 2 points back, and once again, it's the MLS. Anything could happen. I do not believe in my heart of hearts that they're going to make the playoffs, nor should they, honestly, but it's the MLS. That's the only way to explain what's happening here with a -16 goal difference. Just, they haven't scored in a month. They could still be a playoff team. And speaking of anything could happen, Chicago got a massive win over the weekend against Philadelphia, a team that currently holds a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference, 3-0 as well. In their last 2 games, Chicago have scored 5 goals. Granted, they've given up 6, and that was in the one game to DC United. But they have been scoring goals lately. They're 6 points out of a playoff spot. They're not a playoff team, but I'm saying they're looking better, and even more importantly now, they've pulled themselves off the bottom of the table in the Eastern Conference. They're finally out of that 10th place spot, which I'm so happy for them. I did say a few weeks ago that they could maybe get out of there and not finish in last place. At the time, I figured New England would finish in last place, but that's not happening. But I'm happy for them. You know, if they don't finish in last place, I'd say that's a successful season, as well as the fact that their star player, David Accam, was getting a lot of interest from Europe, specifically a French club. And they put an offer in for him, and Chicago decided not to sell him. So I like that even more from them, that they're trying to rebuild there. They're doing the best that they can. They're holding on to their key players. Big ups to them. Now, that's not to say David Accam won't leave in a few years. He probably will. I'd say he is that type of player, much like a Fabian Castillo, that will probably want to test his skills overseas at some point, but I don't think the time is right for him just yet. I'd say he probably needs another season or 2 in the MLS with Chicago, and at that point, he probably will move on. But big ups to Chicago for getting off the bottom of the table, and even bigger ups to them for keeping David Accam at Chicago. So moving on now to the Western Conference, and outside of the NYCFC and DC United match, the other game that had the most playoff implications involved was the game with Dallas and Portland taking place in Frisco, Texas. And Dallas once again is looking good. And I've said a million times, they've had really high highs, really low lows. They're coming off one of those lows, and they're looking good heading into the playoffs. And they're well clear in the Supporters Shield race now. I don't really think any team could catch them. One of you did mention they have one of the toughest schedules remaining. That is true, but they're so clear. 8 points is a lot. 8 points is a massive gap in the MLS. That's the gap they have between them and the next closest team in the Supporters Shield race. I think they'll probably hold on to that first place spot overall and take home the Supporters Shield. Now, as for Portland, on the road, they've been humbled once again. The only team in the league without a win on the road. The only team. Every other team has won at least one game on the road. Portland has not. And that reason right there is why I don't think they're a playoff team. If you can't at least get one win on the road, I don't know if they're going to be able to hold on to that final spot in the playoffs. I think they have 6 games remaining, 3 at home and 3 on the road, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. It's something like that. If they can't at least get a point on the road, much less a win, they're not going to make the playoffs. Similarly, Seattle, who I think has the best chance to catch them, even without Clint Dempsey, they have 8 games remaining, 4 at home, 4 on the road. So they're in a very, very good spot to catch Portland with 2 games in hand, only 4 points back. I'd say they have the best chance. San Jose, who didn't play this weekend either, is still right there. I think they're 1 point ahead of Seattle on 32 points, so only 3 points back of Portland. Portland's got to get results. They have to find a way to get results on the road. If they can't do that, they're definitely not going to make the playoffs. So we've talked actually about every single game that's taken place this week except for one, and that was the final game played this weekend, and it was between LA and Columbus. LA, which is a playoff team, I don't think they'll fall out of the playoffs, and Columbus, who are now in last place in the Eastern Conference, and they took LA to the wire in Carson, California. It looked like LA was heading for, I think, a 3rd or 4th straight draw. We haven't really talked about LA very much, but maybe we should. There are problems with LA. If they can't decisively handle Columbus at home, LA, a team that's known to be nearly unbeatable at the StubHub Center. They just don't lose there. They're struggling against a lot of teams. They've lost Nigel de Jong now. He's gone. They sold him. Zardes is gone for the season with injury. And I gotta say, it's something a lot of people aren't talking about. Giovanni Dos Santos does not look like a designated player. He has not come in and filled that role and looked like he deserves that role on that team. Robbie Keane's still the best striker on that team, and Dos Santos, to his credit, turned up and in the final minutes of that match and ultimately got them the game winner with a beautiful little chip. But overall, since he's come into the league, hasn't really been that good. And if they're going to make a legitimate title run this season, they're going to need a lot more out of Dos Santos. I mean, he has got to be the man, or at least be better than what he has been, I would say. Yeah, maybe he doesn't have to be the man, but he definitely needs to contribute more than he has been. Because in my opinion, every time I see them play, Dos Santos is non-existent. He always ends up getting subbed off, and he's not doing enough. So unless he kind of picks up the pace a little bit and picks up his performances, I don't think LA really have a shot this season at a title. They'll make the playoffs for sure. They're well clear, and I don't think they'll fall out of it, but I don't think they're really a title contender this season. So let's take a look at the standings now, starting with the Eastern Conference. We already talked about it. NYCFC jumps up into that first place spot. New York Red Bulls take over the second spot, and Toronto, having not played this weekend, falls down to third. Without Giovinco for the next couple of weeks, I don't see Toronto making that push to take the first place spot in the East heading into the playoffs. It's on Jozy Altidore for the few weeks that Giovinco's not there. Can he score those goals and lead that team? I don't see it. Honestly, I don't. I think Jozy Altidore's a great player. He's in good form, but I don't know if he's that guy that can do that for them. So Toronto in a little bit of trouble. Still a playoff team, obviously, but I don't think they're going to be a top 2 team in the Eastern Conference without Giovinco. Also, Philadelphia, they lost. Not good. Not good losing to Chicago, but they stay in the 4th place spot. Montreal stays in 5th, having not played. DC United still in 6th place. In the Western Conference, Dallas remains the top team overall in the league as well. They extend their lead on top of that. They're looking so nice right now. RSL stays in 2nd place, having not played. Colorado hurt themselves a lot by taking that loss this weekend. LA still 4th place. Sporting Kansas City did not play. They stay in 5th. Portland retains that 6th place spot even though they lost. San Jose and Seattle not played. Still right on Portland's heels. And then Vancouver, the only other team that could really make the playoffs in the West, they lost as well. So not a lot of change in the Western Conference, but some big results nonetheless. So that is going to do it for this one. Let me know what your thoughts are on the playoff race down below. More specifically, the Eastern Conference. Which team do you think is going to step up and claim that top spot in the East? Is it going to be NYCFC? Is it going to be New York Red Bulls? Or can Toronto hang on without Giovinco for a few weeks? It's going to be a fantastic race. I think it's going to go right down to the wire. Can't wait to see how that one plays out. But that is it for this one. If you did enjoy it, make sure to let me know by leaving a like below. Subscribe if you're new. And I will see you when we come back for another Major League 90. See ya.